Welcome boys and girls, Christine here with a discussion about one of the key issues for Slaanesh in Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires that hopefully Creative Assembly will fix with the upcoming Slaaneshi, Norska, and likely High Elf DLC. Now, if we look at this specific battle, and it is really a battle issue, we can see that we would win it without resolve on Legendary Normal, but we would take substantial casualties. However, if we were to fight this specific battle manually, things would be very, very different. And this is without even using seducing units, which would obviously help us quite a bit. So as we can see from the battle result, this is a very winnable battle, and is a winnable battle with minimal casualties. And that's a pretty big deal, because you have this significant difference between actual manual battle results and auto-resolve results for Slaanesh. Now, to be sure, Slaanesh can be a lot of fun to play from a manual battle perspective, the kind of speed that you have with units, the kind of flanking maneuvers you can pull off. But there's even a couple of issues from a campaign standpoint with respect to battles versus the way that you want to play battles and the kind of incentives you have when you're approaching a campaign. And a campaign is important to really minimize the casualties that you're taking. So this pushes you in a perspective where, yeah, you're just getting Forsaken of Slaanesh, you're just winning those battles with N'Kari more or less, you're fighting these battles manually, a lot of them, or you're taking significant casualties that you can't easily recover from. And suffice to say, that is not really a great dynamic to be dealing with in any kind of campaign, that kind of difference between auto-resolve and manual battles. It makes Slaanesh uniquely vulnerable to auto-resolve, partly because you don't have good casualty replenishment, though that is absolutely something Creative Assembly has looked to improve. But even further, when we're looking at these manual battles, beyond the fact that you have that great difference between manual battles and auto-resolve, you also have a further problem, even if you do fight these battles manually. Because a lot of the big flankers that Slaanesh has, especially if you don't own Champions of Chaos, remember that, a lot of the good units that Slaanesh has are demonic units. So if we look at the Slaaneshi roster, if we're considering baseline Slaaneshi units, you think of things like Seeker Chariots, you think of things like Fiends of Slaanesh. Well, here's what these things do have in common. They're demonic units. So that what that means is that when their leadership collapses, they are going to disintegrate, basically. They're going to be banished. And that means you not only lose the unit from the battle, but you lose the unit from the campaign. Now, Creative Assembly has tried to go with this idea of demon reforging, but I personally think that demon reforging itself is not really a great mechanic, because you never want to fight battles from the perspective of like, oh, I can lose a lord or heroes or units in a battle, but I have a chance in the aftermath of that battle of potentially getting it back again. It's just not a great mechanic. It works to a degree for vampire counts, and mind you, it's not especially great for vampire counts that have that dynamic, because it creates that tedium of having to fight those battles manually again and again and again. At least vampire counts, funnily enough, vampire counts in Slaanesh are actually very similar from this perspective with respect to demonic units, because basically what you end up realizing when you're playing a vampire counts campaign, when you're playing a Slaaneshi campaign, is that you basically want to fight these battles while using your army as little as possible and maximizing your lord output. N'Kari can win battles for you manually. It's not really that difficult. N'Kari certainly has that kind of capability, but only N'Kari has that kind of capability, or your lords to an extent can carry you, your generic lords and heroes can carry you to a degree, but let me say this as bluntly as possible. As fun as N'Kari is as a legendary lord, very fast, very powerful, does an immense amount of charge damage, right? Very scary when you're dealing with N'Kari in a battle, like especially when you're using, Sweet Sorrow as an active ability. Ooh, that's pretty nasty. But the problem is, it gets fairly tedious fairly quickly, even on lower difficulties, let alone Legendary, where it can feel like you're having to fight every single battle manually. And it's a similar issue with Vampire Counts. It is one of their key issues. And they're similar from the perspective that both of them are races that are really good from a lot of different perspectives on the campaign map. So specifically, economy can be good for Slaanesh. Well, not necessarily economy itself. Vassal income can be good for Slaanesh. Vassalization can be good. Cults can be really good, etc. But the battles end up feeling like, oh, I'm just using my lord. My army is there for balance of power. What this also does further is that you don't actually end up with a lot of unit variety in terms of the things you want to use in a battle. Because, again, you want units that give you balance of power that won't be destroyed. It's one thing if you're controlling a lord, but if, you're dealing with high elves, for instance, that can have a lot of range power and a lot of spearmen, and you're using things like Seeker Chariots and other units in a campaign, or even using units like, you look at Hellstriders, you really want units that have durability. This pushes you down the path of get Champions of Chaos, get Forsaken of Slaanesh, get Chaos Warriors of Slaanesh, get Chaos Knights of Slaanesh. Really good units. I have nothing against any of these units. But when you're playing campaign after campaign after campaign and you're using the same stuff over and over again, it is fairly boring to do that. When you realize, oh, that's the best path and no other path even comes close. Like, a really good race is not one that has just one really good path, but has a lot of different choices that do work. This is the great thing about Dwarves. This is the great thing about Empire. This is the great thing about Skaven. This is the great thing about Greenskins. That you do have a bunch of different units that do work. A bunch of different army compositions, hero compositions, lore compositions, and you can use those, and all of those are viable to a degree or another. Some are better than others, depending on Legendary Lord skill lines, what you've decided to focus on, but it is a decision on your part of the player, which you don't have with Slaanesh. So this one issue of, you could say auto-resolve, but the issue of battles and the dynamics of battles versus campaigns do end up hurting Slaanesh campaigns in quite a lot of ways. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Nakari is a fun campaign to do once, exactly once, maybe twice if you have a lot of patience for it. And it's fun to conquer Ulfon, deal with Tyrion, deal with Alariel, deal with Elfarion. It is difficult. But once you do it once and you figure out the best path for it, you can replicate it, you can do it again, no problem. In a campaign, and then it's like, okay, we dealt with that, what else is there with the campaign? You might think, oh, you have a lot of dynamic things that you can do because you can summon cults, you can teleport, you can do all those kind of things, sure. But remember what I mentioned about the dynamic. You either have a really powerful army that just, you have to fight every battle manually. Now, casualty replenishment, which they talked about, will help with this, but it's not just a question of casualty replenishment, because yes, casualty replenishment will make it so that I can just play an entire Slaanesh campaign once I get Forsaken and Cast Warriors without having to fight a battle manually. That's better in ways as opposed to the tedium of having to fight a lot of these battles manually, but what's the point of having so many cool units when you don't want to use them? Senior, signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications. Stay tuned for more.